Welcome back to the Moms Like Me podcast powered by Support Now. One of my favorite things about this podcast, about Support Now, is you have the opportunity to meet some really incredible people and you get the opportunity to make some very fast friends. And I put our guest, Ashlyn, in that category of someone where you immediately meet, your energies align, your visions align, and you also just walk away inspired. So I am so thrilled to be able to introduce our podcast guest today, Ashlyn Thompson. Of course, she is a mom. She is a leader in her community. She is one of the co-founders of Parent Empowerment Network, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But she has a tremendous story and a very honest story to tell about her own journey, both through childhood all the way to motherhood, and now, of course, inspiring hundreds, if not thousands of parents across the country. So Ashlyn, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, Jordan, thank you for having me. It's really exciting to be here. And I echo everything you said in the introduction. It was just one of those instances where like meets like, and I instantly felt comfortable with you. And I could very easily see why our mutual friend and superhero, Abby Zacharitz, saw the signs that we needed to meet. So thank you for having me today.
Of course. Ashlyn, in our first conversation, you beautifully laid out kind of how you kind of felt that you were always destined to do something like this. Because I think a lot of people look at someone like you and say, how could you dedicate your whole life to this? How could this be something that you live in? Because it's hard and it's emotional. So I'd love for you to share a little bit more about your own background and kind of what led you down this path of building this incredible nonprofit that's serving families across the country.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to. So when I look back, it's really easy to see how my entire life has been preparing me to be this version of myself. And it wasn't the good things and the easy things that were preparing me. But a lot of blessings were in my life from the start. And one of the things that I feel like is unique about me is, coincidentally, I can now call myself a third generation parent advocate. I grew up immediately ensconced in the life of being a voice for those who have no voice. My grandparents had my Uncle Mark in the 60s, and it wasn't until he was 9 months old that they realized something is wrong, and he was having seizures. Well, he had had a traumatic brain injury during birth because he was delivered almost 2 weeks late, lost oxygen, and the doctor had refused to induce my grandmother. So it was something that could have been prevented, but it was not. And he was severely autistic. He was nonverbal. And by the time he was a couple years old, there were many, many doctors telling my grandparents that the best thing they could do was to give him up to the state and go have another child. And even saying those words out loud today, it never fails to punch me in the stomach and just try to imagine what it felt like to be in their shoes. And what I'm happy to say is that my grandparents definitely did not accept that. And they lived in Indiana, that's where I am from. And the only place they could find that had any type of services, any type of programs for children with, special needs, disabilities, what have you, at the time was a program in Pennsylvania. So for years, they literally would drive my Uncle Mark to Pennsylvania with my mom, who was 6 years older, twice a month, stay for 4 or 5 days, take him through all the therapies, learn all the things, come back, practice all of them at home, and then go back again. And I can't imagine what that was like, but it instilled in me, I feel like I'm fortunate to have inherited, in a sense, their fortitude and their determination, and also their perspective of the value of life and just celebrating all of us, no matter how different we are. I have often said the most influential person in my life is always my Uncle Mark, who never said a single word because he set all of this in motion. So fast forward, I am one of 3 kids. I'm the classic middle child known as the cliff diver in my family. My mom, therefore, is also often my bubble popper, is what I call her, because I would always have these really great big ideas, and she was always very quick to let me know if those were actually, typically safe was the word she was most concerned with that was growing up. Sometimes they were, others they weren't. And so anyway, all my siblings and I were very close. We're each 4 years apart. So older sister's 4 years ahead, younger brother's 4 years younger. And when he was in college, he had been diagnosed late in life with hemophilia. It was not known until he was almost going into college that he had hemophilia. So that just absolutely crushed my mom, because realizing that all those countless ankle sprains and all of those horrific bleeds he had when, he'd have a nosebleed or, had teeth pulled, not realizing, oh, it's because he can't clot, that it was, taking so long. But doctors were also saying like, he's fine. So anyway, in college, his freshman year, he started to have extreme back pain out of nowhere, like could not walk, which was really scary. Luckily, he was at school close by, and my parents went and got him, did all the tests. They ended up finding a tumor inside of his spinal column. And thank God, fast forward, it was benign. But my mom still, that was, 10 years ago, maybe. I mean, the look on my mom's face now when she talks about the moment she turned the corner to his ICU room and saw oncology on the unit, I mean, you just see the color drain from her. And it's 10 years later. And that impact, there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
So I've been experiencing all these things my whole life. My family had their own nonprofit. They had started around my uncle, which is called the Elysian Foundation. And it was just a bunch of parents grouping together to say, our kids are important. They deserve a good life, and they deserve things that are fun, things that are beautiful, things that are outside of a house, all those things. And so that's what they do. They really focus on quality of life. So if I'm being really honest, I really felt like I was checking the box in my life of having children with special needs, as part of it. I really felt like, okay, I'm close to this. I'm in this. I support this. I love this. But this is as close as I'm ever going to get to it. And then in 2021, I was pregnant with my daughter, my second child. And this pregnancy came not long after I had lost my father, who had passed away after almost 2 years of living remarkably, with the result of a bilateral stroke that took out more than 60% of his brain the first time. Never could speak, could not move his own body, but he was very aware. And we were able to understand, I know he understood me. And that was a really hard 2 years. Seeing an adult who lived out on a ranch in Nebraska, 7,000 acres, living his cowboy dream, reduced to living in a nursing home in Indiana with other people having to change him, dress him, feed him, move him. He couldn't turn a TV channel if he wanted to watch something different. And those 2 years about killed me.
Wow.
But so many beautiful things happened. And what I didn't realize at the time was how much preparation I was undergoing for who I was meant to become. And I look back at those years now with a different lens. And it's one where I have gratitude, not just for the experience, but I like to think, in a way that I think of my dad. Not saying he chose that, but it gave me an opportunity to learn to love him in a different way. It helped me really, really learn what it meant to be an advocate and to not accept answers that I was not okay with. And those are some of the things that I, continue to take with me today that are so important. And so when I had my daughter, the important thing to know is that she ultimately ended up being born with a very, very rare, very complex birth defect that's in the midline. And when I got the news that 27 weeks pregnant, I paused, because that moment always just, takes a second. But I now call that moment the moment of impact. Whenever I'm talking to somebody about their story, a lot of us who've had anything hard, traumatic, but especially with families when they've learned their child is not well, it's a moment of impact. It's that explosion, right? When everything that was no longer ceases Like it ceases to exist as it was, and it never will return to that. That life is gone in an instant. The plans that you had painted so perfectly in your mind are now erased, it feels, in the moment. And I remember my very first thought after the doctor said the news. She said, I've been doing this for 35 years. This is the second time I've seen this. Those were not odds I was thrilled about. But I remember my first thought was, Dad, really? You just went to heaven and you couldn't do this one job? You couldn't make sure that my baby came to be healthy? And it was so irrational. But I say it now because I'm able to laugh a little bit. But also, I think that shows in the moment of just, I could not grasp that this was happening. Hadn't we been through enough?
Yeah.
And those days were really hard at first. But I'm surrounded by an incredible family. I am extremely blessed with this amazing support system. I've just told you all about all of our experience. So while you might think that I was ready for this, what I learned very quickly is nothing prepares you for it when it's your own child, when it is the one that you carry.
Quick question for you. You laid out your journey beautifully in terms of being this third generation advocate, which I think is a really powerful way of explaining it. How did your husband respond?
Yeah, so I'm glad that you asked that, because that is actually something that has become a really big part of present day mission for Parent Empowerment Network. So my husband reacted very differently, which we are a classic couple. Jordan, I don't know about you and your husband. We are definitely like the opposites, right? Where I'm more outgoing in terms of like I can connect with a wall sometimes if I need to. Like I love connecting with people. I'm terrified in a big setting, but I love to connect. And whereas my husband would happily just do the same routine, eat the same food, go to the same places every week, and just absolutely thrive in monotony. But, we found, there's balance to that, right? When we remember to look at it as a good thing, which isn't always every day.
Yeah.
But he was very stoic, which I appreciated at the beginning, right? With our daughter. But looking back, those differences started to show up with when my dad experienced his stroke and we brought him to Indiana to be, minutes from us. And I think the best way to describe the difference in how we handled it was, my life, I was totally absorbed with it. Plus, I was a mom. My son was a year and a half old when
Right.
it happened. And I had a really, really, really hard postpartum journey in terms of severe postpartum anxiety and depression as well. And I felt like I was just getting my groove as a mom a year and a half into it. And
Yeah.
then bam, the stuff with my dad happens. But I remember one time with my husband, I was just so upset. And I said to him, I was like, you never even asked me how he is or how I'm doing or if I need any help or anything. And he said, well, I just assume if you need something, you'll ask me.
Mm.
Or he said, and I don't bring it up because I know it makes you sad. So I don't bring it up. So I don't make you sad. And that was such a telling moment that I didn't realize the weight of it then. But that continued to be his way of processing
Mhm.
our experience when we had our daughter. Now, he was great with Emery. I mean, at the beginning, he was really, just that stoic, steady dad, right? But what I didn't know, and he didn't know for quite a long time, was how much he was dangerously suppressing her pain that he could not fix was something he had to shut out and numb and turn his back from, in a sense. And so we looked like that classic mom dad duo where mom is, forget the driver's seat. Like I was driving the whole family in an RV like all the time, right?
Mhm.
Like managing everything.
Yeah.
And he was going to work and doing his thing. And we just got further and further and further apart. And We talk a lot about families who have a child with medical needs, challenges, how isolating it is, right? Like how we can really be closed off from our community. But what I think a lot of us experience that we don't talk about enough is the isolation that happens within our own walls. And that's something my husband and I experienced as we became isolated from one another. And it wasn't intentional.
Yeah, and I think what you're describing in so many words is he didn't know how to process his own grief
Exactly.
of the experience he thought he was gonna have, and
Hmm.
even the relationship that he thought you all would have as a result of that.
Right.
So that
Hmm.
is so real. And part of why I asked that question, by the way, is because when you talk about parent empowerment network in a little bit, it's not just about moms, right? Like, it is
Exactly.
parents, like, it is a unit, and understanding that this, we, of course, I lean into the mom thing. It's my podcast is called Moms Like Me, and I love talking to moms about it. And to your point, this affects the entire unit, and you just have to be so cognizant of understanding how, while it may display differently with your husband or your
Hmm.
significant other, that doesn't mean that they're not feeling. In fact, they're probably feeling very, very deeply. They just don't know how to
Right.
express it. So, Ashlyn, tell me a little bit more about, you know, Emery's born.
Hmm.
Kind of what happened both right after, and then kind of what led you to this feeling of, gosh, if I feel this way, there's got to be more
Right.
people out there that feel this way too.
Exactly. So, one thing that happened before Emery was born that really kicked off how Parent Empowerment Network came to be is that, like I said, I had this great support system, amazing family around me, and I leaned on them heavily because I couldn't stand otherwise.
Mm.
But even with my family's experience, it wasn't until I called a friend of a friend, who is Emily Whiting, who is now today one of my absolute closest friends, as well as my co-founder, partner in crime, all the things now, because I knew about her daughter, Charlotte, who had been born with extremely complex medical needs. And she was very much still in the throes of all the things with her. And I just felt this need to talk to another mom who was in it at the same time, who
Mm.
felt more like a peer as opposed to somebody who was further down the road, right? And when I talked to her, and by talk to her, I mean while I cried and listened and cried and listened in the first 30 minutes, what I got from that though cemented what I firmly believe is true for all of us. It is a very powerful experience when we can connect with somebody who feels with us, not just for us. And that's such a defining difference. It's a huge difference. And when you connect with somebody who can feel with you, it just it shaves away all the other layers that normally we have to navigate through to find connection, right? Instead, you just meet heart to heart. And it I had no idea in the moment how crucial that would be, but it has remained a crucial part of my journey ever since. And it's one that Emily and I are both committed to making sure as many families as possible have that same support, that same pillar of strength in their own lives. So when I had Emery, it all went crazy, but having Emily to reach out to and connect with started to show me that value even more. And I think that's what started opening my eyes to the thought of how many people are doing this without an Emily? How many people are doing this without a family like mine? How are they surviving? How is their child okay? Because of advocacy, not even knowing what it was. I didn't know that to me, mom did not equal advocate. Those were two very different things I found myself doing. And now I had to figure out how to make them into one. I had to be a momvocate all at
Mm.
the same time.
So, and I think what you said is also a really important call out for someone that might be viewing you or your family on the sidelines. It's just a great reminder that you can be years into a journey with a medically complex
Mhm.
child with or severe needs, however you want to categorize that. And it's still hard. That you are
Oh,
evolving and you are rising to the challenge of the day. And I say that because I think it's so easy to kind of look on the outside and say, "Well, they seem like they've got it all together now, right? They've got their therapies, they've got their people, they've got the equipment they need, they've gotten into a groove." Because I think uh, we so badly want to just say we feel so uncomfortable with the idea that someone can
yes.
be just
Mhm.
ch so challenged on a day-to-day basis like that. And the challenges that you face and that you've described so many of your families facing is it's pervasive. It
Right.
evolves. Of course, certain things you get used to, but that doesn't mean that it's not challenging, and I think that that's the power of
Right.
creating, to your point, this community of other parents that know what it's like to walk through this journey, knowing it's gonna be hard, exhausting, and most people
Right.
aren't going to understand you.
Right.
Like, in
They're
some
not.
ways, this is someone told me this recently, and this is a different context. They talk about how sometimes you're unrelatable, and I'm like, "Ooh, that sounds harsh." But what they mean, and I mean this for you too, it's like your situation, so few people can actually wrap their brains around. You're unrelatable, which means the value of finding someone that knows what it's like, the power of that is so much more significant.
It is. It absolutely is. And I think we can all experience that with various aspects of our lives, whether you're somebody who's been through a divorce or
That's right.
you've been in an abusive relationship or, you lost your job in a layoff even, unexpectedly. I mean, just allowing yourself to be open when you find those people is a gift to ourselves and one that I hope that anybody can learn from, the message that we are sharing and experience that we, you know, open up for everybody to look at and see but learn from.
So you talk about, we've talked about this before, this line that both of you became committed to, if not us,
Right.
then who? If not now,
Right. Then
then
when?
when? So talk a little bit more about, as you saw the power of this friendship and as you started to question how it's possible, and I agree with you, how is it possible that anyone can do this without people that have like-minded people in their corner? How did that evolve? How did that become what Parent Empowerment Network is today?
Right. So when Emery had her first surgery at 7 weeks old, she was in the OR for 11 hours. And
Mm.
there was one plan for what it was supposed to look like when she came out of it. And that plan did not get followed. There were some misunderstandings, some lack of communication that took place at a world-class hospital. And my daughter almost died in front of me twice. And that moment became a constant haunt. I just could not let go of that experience and all that took place after that. And I think that that experience was actually really important for me to go through, for all of us to go through, because it took me to the brink of realizing how far things can go that you don't expect. And it also made me take off the rose-colored goggles that healthcare is something that you hand over to somebody with a lot of letters after their name, maybe a white coat, and then you step back and let them do everything because they know best. That experience was ripped off. And I'm the first to say that I know that nobody intentionally put my daughter in that position. It was human error, which every one of us is capable of a million times a day.
Right.
And I think that I just couldn't get out of my head, right? This happened and these accidents happened and this mistake happened. So what else could happen? And I just became, you talk about hyper vigilant,
Mm.
but I was able to be there all the time. And I was on a floor where I was seeing countless rooms with children, all ages, whose parents or family members could only be there before work, after work, maybe at a lunch break. And my mind was blown, but I didn't even, it never even entered my mind of that being a possibility, that somebody would literally have to leave their child to go to work so their child can actually get the care that they need. And that hurt my mom's heart in a way, I'm getting chills now, that I cannot explain. And so after we got out of the
Yeah.
hospital, we were there for 33 days, 28 of which I called Groundhog's Day from hell. It's like that movie, but it just kept happening over and over. Like, I knew what was going to happen. I knew the timetables. I knew the worst parts, generally between midnight and 4 a.m. And when we got out, I thought I was going to be so happy to get home, and I just broke down.
Hmm.
Like, I probably needed a white coat for a while, and I think I would have welcomed it at that point. But I didn't have a true panic attack breakdown until we came home, because I finally could let go a
Yeah.
little bit. And then I realized, wait, there's nobody here to catch her. So I needed to take some time, right, to like get my head straight as best I could. I had no idea what that looked like. But about 3 weeks after being home, I just couldn't stop thinking about those rooms, those families where those kids, their parents couldn't be by their side all the time. And wondering, were things being missed with their kids? Were they getting their medication on time? Were they missing signs? And not because those parents didn't want to be there. I knew that. And that's just when, the only way to describe it is, that's when God tapped my shoulder and said, now's your time to see what you're here for, is what that moment felt like for me. And I didn't even think about it. I was folding laundry, which I will admit is a rarity in my house because my husband does the majority of the laundry, bless him. I was folding laundry, and all of a sudden, I just picked up my phone and I called Emily and I said, hey, I'm not going to give this a second thought, but I'm calling you to present this as a question, but I already know the answer is yes. Would you do a podcast with me to help reach out to other parents who are going through any type of medical challenge with their child, to let them know that they are not alone and they can do this? And I don't know what else from there, but I just feel like we need to do this. And she said, are you going to do this even if I say no? I said, yes. Said, okay, then I'm in. And from there, we developed what became known as Charlotte's Hope Foundation, was our original name. And really, our only intention was to start a podcast and then hopefully provide some one-on-one direct mentoring to parents. And we really just wanted to be that lifeline that, you know, could walk up to that parent basically sitting in that OR waiting room
Hmm.
and not try to fix it for them, not try to tell them everything's okay, not to worry, just be there with them and let them know that no matter what does happen, you have what it takes to go through it and you don't have to do it alone. And that started us on this incredible journey that evolved into so much more than even our big, vivacious imaginations could come up with at the time. And what we realized is it was time to evolve into our identity that we had grown into. Felt like we grew up these last 3 years, and we became Parent Empowerment Network. And we have our podcast, Empowered by Hope. And the reason we have that name, Empowered by Hope, is because it is woven through every message, every piece of content that we put out, and every strategy we create. We don't think of hope as an outcome. We don't attach it to that. This life has taught us that hope is a mindset. And if you can live with a hopeful mindset, even when everything is against you and it feels impossible, a hopeful mindset is what drives you to be able to get out of bed and go pick up your crying child when you're just defeated. A hopeful mindset is what propels you to do one more internet search and find that doctor who has maybe developed something new or could have a different opinion. That's what we want parents to know that they can live with. And that changes the journey. That literally has been scientifically proven by Snyder's Hope theory to have an impact on medical outcomes for children. But we really focus, it's quality of life. And at the end of the day, what we have learned and what we practice and preach over and over at Parent Empowerment Network is that in order to really take care of the child, we have to take care of the entire family. Because, perfect example, you were talking about, what was the difference between coping mechanisms between my husband and I? Well, our coping mechanisms were so different that we literally almost got divorced. And we are a very, very blessed success story that we did not. But I will tell you, God literally took us to like the very last moment. And, I am grateful still every day that we were able to, right the ship. But even the best healthcare in the world, the best doctors, all of that, if your family's not living, if there's no joy or if there's no moments to experience gratitude or, to just enjoy being a parent and enjoy being a child, what is that? So we have to take care of the whole unit. And the gap that we best were created to fill is the emotional triage that is needed after a moment of impact occurs for a family. Our goal is to be those first responders who are there to meet people in their crisis, acknowledge it, right? And then properly help start to pull them out of the rubble and then show them the way to all the amazing million resources that are out there, like Support Now, like Advocacy Abby. But if we don't first provide that life-sustaining triage, stabilize them, then we can't hear what's out there. We can't truly benefit from those resources if we're so stunned and shocked and frozen, right? So that's the gap that we want everybody to know. I think a lot of advocates even miss that. We're so excited to help a family. Oh, I know these great resources and oh, we can help with your insurance or set up a meal chain or fundraise and all these things. But if we're still reeling as a family emotionally,
Yeah.
I can't hear you. I don't know what you're telling me to do because I'm so shattered. I can't imagine that anything is possible to make this better. So that's where Parent Empowerment Network wants to fit in. That is our role, that we want to, lead the way in helping so that these families can find you amazing creators out there who are doing great things to help them.
Ashlyn, where can people find you or find out how they can support you? A lot of people that listen to this podcast, they may not qualify, in terms of being a good candidate for you all, but they might be very supportive of your efforts. So where can they find you? How can people support you?
Right. Well, we would love if you would visit our website, parentempowermentnetwork.org. And then we have the same handle for our social media on Facebook and Instagram, and just send us a message. You can send us a message, an email even at contact@parentempowermentnetwork.org. And we would love to connect with anybody. And what we find so often, and Jordan, I have a feeling you experience this too, we all have so many more things in common than we don't. When you push away all the excess layers on the outside we tend to share with the world, we're all so much more connected at a soul level, at a heart-to-heart level. We really believe that people want to do well, but they want to do it by doing good. And we want to do that with you. And, even if you're not a person who has a child with medical needs, please do not dismiss yourself as somebody who benefits from this. Every one of us most likely will serve as a caregiver at some point in our lives. Our messages on Empowered by Hope are very, very fitting for that. Or I guarantee that anybody listening to this knows somebody who's impacted by it. So we all have a role to play in supporting one another and, strengthening that village. And it is a gift that just keeps on giving
Totally.
when we do that.
Ashlyn, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. There's just so many takeaways that I have, so many notes that I've taken that I think will be very valuable to me personally and my own kind of day-to-day life, as well as to the families we serve. I mean, it really is such a testament to you're so honest about how you felt and the realness of this. I think again, it's so easy from the outside to say, I can't imagine, and then they move on from it. I kind of like to sit in this a little bit because what I realize when you talk is that you couldn't imagine this either. And this isn't what you dreamt of. These were the cards you were dealt, and now you're just these are the choices that you've made to make this life full, to make it full
Yes.
and fulfilling for you, for your family, for Emery, of course, and then for others. And so I really do find so much inspiration in this. And of course, I know this is the first of many, many opportunities for us to continue to collaborate together. But I just want to thank you for your leadership and your vision, and just look forward to many more conversations.
Thank you, Jordan. I appreciate it.